if you really look at it, the problem is us, isn't it? The problem is that point of view that simply won't deal with what is.
Do you believe
And
that?
that's...
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, no, go ahead.
Do you believe that we have more than one life, or how do we progress and learn? Because what I'm also getting at from what you're describing here is that this is again this process that we have to go through this particular period in order to understand and learn it. But on top of that, I guess you can add this idea or theory about possible reincarnation, that we are having multiple trial runs here, so to speak, in order to actually learn and propel this. Do you think that's the case, or do you think that this is all about the unconscious growing and our kind of collective memory that is slowly learning?
Yeah, I think the latter is a much healthier model, Henrik, because to me the reincarnation model just reeks of egotism again. This idea that I was Adolf Hitler in a past life, yeah, or whoever, it doesn't actually hold up. I mean, never mind if one looks into the statistics and all the rest of it, reincarnation couldn't possibly apply to everyone anyway. So if it is a reality, then it's very selective. But even beyond that, I mean, who is this I that we're referring to as reincarnating? Because if I was Adolf Hitler in a past life, then I wasn't I. You know, that means Adolf Hitler is now me. No, it's a paradox in itself, or a contradiction. And I think it's what we talked about in the first hour, this irresistible temptation to frame and sort of interpret the unknown in terms that we can understand, in terms of the known. And so we do intuit that as consciousness we have an existence above and beyond this identity. And so then we create this very linear model of a soul that incarnates, reincarnates on this sort of journey to knowledge. But again, if you look at that, that's a very worldly model, isn't it? It's basically based on our idea of higher learning and of colleges and hierarchies and structures. And why would we think that the cosmic unknowable structure of creation would somehow parallel our own worldly structures, when we also know that our worldly structures are totally distorted and non-functioning, and we basically see them as a big lie and a big snare. So the universe has to be infinitely more subtle and mysterious than anything that we can interpret in such a linear way. Hence your idea of the collective. I mean, that's definitely how I choose to see it, that we are, you, Henrik, I, Aelous, we are fragments of consciousness that belongs to a greater morphogenetic field of consciousness, which is the species, which is linked to the Earth, which is part of the solar system, and so on ad infinitum. So we're actually just local points of view in a collective intelligence system, a greater intelligence system, which is actually unified, a universe. And so we're all constantly reincarnating,
Yes.
that energy is constantly taking new forms, but there's nothing personal about it.
There was something that slipped my mind here now that I wanted to ask you about. Let's see here. It was about the idea that, okay. Do you think that we are refining ourselves or the unconscious all the time then, or do you think that we're in a kind of a devolutionary process, if we use a term of Michael Cremo?
Well, I think that we are being refined, or consciousness is being refined through this physical experience of organic life. I think the species itself, it appears to be, there seems to be a mutation process. I think that collectively the species is devolving in terms of awareness and the refinement of consciousness, but that this is actually an alchemical process by which the gold is being drawn from the lead. And so as the gold nuggets are emerging, the lead is being reduced. So you take a lot of lead to make a little bit of gold. And in terms of consciousness, I think Neil Kramer talks about this, and I think that he's one of the only people to put his finger on this, that consciousness is actually going where it is welcome, in a sense. It's like the biblical saying that to he who has will be given, and to he who has not will be taken, even that little that he has. Those of us who are able to wield consciousness, to align with consciousness, and actually embody, this galactic frequency or spirit or whatever it is, we'll be receiving more and more of it, not personally. It's like water that flows where it can.
Yes.
We're creating a space for it, and this consciousness fills. But this consciousness must come from somewhere. And I think although it's galactic consciousness and so potentially it's infinite, I think it's at this time anyway, we're in this quarantine Earth, it's actually a finite quanta of consciousness which is restricted to the human organism, the species. And so this consciousness, the more it flows into those who are resonating with truth, the less consciousness there is for those who are not aligning. So the mass will go deeper and deeper into unconsciousness and denial and untruth, while a very small few will begin to resonate more and more brightly with truth. And so I think there's a twin process occurring, which is evolutionary, devolutionary, but which is alchemical. And it's back to the egg and the omelets, really. That there is this new form, this new. I think it is a form. Well, for consciousness, but that its creation or its being birthed depends upon the destruction of the old form, which is humanity as we know it.
I'm glad you mentioned that kind of split, because that was something that I did want to get into regarding how this seems to take place at this specific point in time, where a few are very much involved in learning, growing, evolving, building, so to speak, on themselves, or trying to learn about themselves. And another crowd that seems to go totally into the opposite of this kind of more Dionysian, just enjoyment, pleasure, and games, entertainment, all that stuff. If we think about the kind of, or the nightmare scenario, I guess, if we don't recognize the importance of the internal, what do you think the consequences of that will be for those who try to push this to the side, so to speak? Is there a nightmare scenario here? I mean, will we go into this control grid that you mentioned before, where we might be able to see transhumanism as the next step of the so-called human being, or where do you think this might end up at the end?
Well, yes, I think that the split that we're talking about, it may be a very literal split, but quite unfathomable to our minds at this time, because we think that we're in reality, that what we're experiencing now is reality, rather than the one particular tunnel that we've created, a bardo realm, you might even say, which is part of what it is that makes us in quarantine, where we're actually being purged of some condition, which you could call egomania or self-importance. And so I think that those who are willing to surrender their identities, their self-importance, and simply get with the program, just allow themselves to become expressions of the universal energy, they will accordingly be released from this holding pen and move into a whole new heaven and a new earth. And those who can't, well, I think there's two possible scenarios. One is that they will experience gnosis or awakening anyway and be destroyed by it, and then we would see the destruction of the species such as it is, except for very few, not through any sort of necessarily environmental cataclysm or global conspiracy or anything, but simply through the awakening of their own unconscious and being overwhelmed by all of that disowned, unprocessed psychic matter. To have to go through all of that in a few moments, having spent a lifetime suppressing it, would be annihilating, wouldn't it? So either that would happen, or what you're talking about would be that it would be like two realities would be created. There would be a fork in reality, and on one earth this new world order of total enslavement to the microchip and all of that scenario, which has been created, as I say, not only by the elite but by those of us who've believed in this narrative and been propagating it. It's becoming more and more real as a possibility, and so eventually it would have to become a reality, unless there was some global cataclysm which just brought it all to an end. So maybe this is a mercy for vast numbers of individuals who aren't ready for gnosis, for full awakening of their God natures, to spend another couple of thousand years as zombie slaves to a global elite. I really don't know, you know.
And in one sense, I also feel that it's their, and this might sound weird, but it's their right to have their experience as they see fit. And this returns to the idea that you were talking about later on, that if we think that we should be able to, control how other people should live their lives, in that sense, that, oh, no, you gotta wake up, you gotta look at all these important areas and realize how control you are, yada, yada, yada. We don't know at this point what the purpose of their experience might be, and in some sense, the joy that they might be experiencing, unbeknownst to all this other crap that is going on. And to me, it feels like already there we have a split, so to speak, with these two very, very different systems. Obviously, there is a gray area here as well, where it isn't this dichotomy as clear as that. But I definitely see that there's two different sides already here, and if these just increase and increase as we go along, I think it's a natural next step, so to speak, to just see these very two distinct and different sides, basically.
Yeah, well, it's really it is impossible to say, isn't it, to predict the way things are going within the next few decades. I just feel that it is absolutely critical now for the species, the kind of make or break period.
Yes.
And again, there's no way to take on the responsibility of awakening humanity, and because, as you pointed out, that may not be what humanity wants or needs. We can only try and frame our discoveries and our perceptions of what's going on in a way that is personal and individual to ourselves, and then act accordingly.
Yeah,
I think.
Absolutely, and because otherwise that would also imply that we're saying that everyone is just the same, and are on a soul or spiritual level, we might be of very different qualities or properties of this universal force that kind of runs through it, and the purpose here might be for this diversity of multiple experiences. And if we think about it already, or at least from my point of view, it's incredible how different people seem to experience certain events and situations, and it's a multitude of different truths and versions of reality that they're kind of coexist on the same planet at the same time, which is quite interesting in itself. And that brings me to another question, Aelous, that you were talking about. You were talking about a new heaven and a new earth before. That is a possibility here. When you say that, do you think that we're talking about another place physically, or do you think that these two different systems that we're talking about can actually coexist on the same planet?
Well, I guess we'd have to be talking about parallel universes at this point, in terms of if we're going to try and keep it within what we think we know about reality. Because, that would be the only scientific model I can think of which would somehow account for what I perceive happening here. But the thing is that I have a very strong visceral sense, and I've had it since I was a child, that, as I've already said, that what we perceive of as reality is not reality, that we are actually in a kind of matrix, a kind of illusory realm which has been created, not by machines, but by very powerful beings who were once human, who have forged a pact with what Carlos Castaneda terms as inorganic beings, in order to, it's basically a